Hey guys, it's that time again for another vlog! Yay! Who are we going to talk about this time, Agrippa?
You've never heard of Johann Weyer? My God, boy.
That's right, we're going to talk about Johann Weyer. Or Weyer, whatever. He's what I consider one of the four main characters in the Dark Descent, but the thing is, he doesn't even make an appearance in the game. We don't even have concept art of him, and he doesn't utter a line of dialogue. Even in the Agrippa ending, when he finally returns to Weyer, we don't hear Weyer saying anything. All we have is Agrippa talking to him as a one-way conversation, and that's it. So it's really fascinating how such a character that has seemingly virtually no direct contact in the Dark Descent story to play such an important role, but he does. And it's not just as being Agrippa's friend and weaving in that story of Agrippa and Weyer and with the whole thing. There's more to it than that. I think the fandom kind of overlooks him a lot. It's because of Weyer that the whole story could actually take place. Let's put it that way. It will do you good if you have read the Remember collection before watching this video. That is, at least the short stories with the Blessing of a King, and the one with Herbert and his friend Faraj. I can't remember the name of that one. It's good to have read those before we talk more in depth about Weyer. Now, obviously, there's some differences, between the historical Weyer and the character version of Weyer, not just because of like the orbs and stuff like that. Weyer knew Agrippa right into adulthood, etc., etc. Maybe they both visited Brennenburg at the same time when they were both adults and got to know Alexander or something like that. Falling out between Alexander and Agrippa and Weyer is kind of left in the dark for how it exactly came to be. We just know that Weyer went through the portal, offered to bring Agrippa along, and Agrippa said no because he was scared. So we're wondering, okay, so why did Weyer exclude Alexander from that? He is the one who has such mastery of the orbs. He's obviously gotten to know Alexander during their whole interactions together, or whatever times they were in Brennenburg. Now they're kind of at odds with each other. They're butting heads because now Alexander's constantly asking Weyer to help him get back home and lift his banishment, while Weyer's asking, well, I can't do it without Agrippa's help, you have to release Agrippa to me first. That's sort of where things leave off by the time that Daniel comes in, but I'm getting ahead of myself. To start off with, we have to realize that Herbert got a map from his friend Faraj to locate the tomb of Tin Hinan in Algeria, which had an orb. They obviously knew this was based on Weyer's work, because Faraj says that on the back of the map are drawings from Weyer, etc., so the map came from Weyer. So if it wasn't for Weyer, the tomb of Tin Hinan would not have been found by Herbert, and Daniel would not have gone in, found the orb, and the whole shebang would not have happened. Or it would have happened with somebody else. So keep that in mind. Yes, we don't see Weyer or hear a line of dialogue from in the entire Dark Descent game, but that's how big of a role he still plays. Now, it's also interesting to note that Weyer was the only one since the fall of the Mithraic faith, as Agrippa puts it.
But unlike every other fighter since the fall of the slave faith, he was able to unshackle the law. You and I connected with the law.
To use the orbs without fear of the shadow chasing him, which is amazing because even Alexander had to fear the shadow, and he's incredibly intelligent, knows about his world and this one, and these powerful artifacts are still throwing him for a loop, which is interesting because we don't even know if the orbs, in terms of Amnesia, are actually from Earth, or if they're from a place and were brought to Earth. We don't know. It's interesting to note that there were people, apparently a long time ago, that could use the orbs at will, and you're like wondering, what did they do with that power in the Mithraic faith? Did they use it to travel beyond the stars and come back? The orbs seem to be used as a way of opening gates between worlds, but there could be other uses for them as well. We don't know. But what's interesting is that I looked up Mithraism, and it was some kind of Roman cult to a god called Mithra or something. I didn't get into the nitty-gritty details of it, but it lasted from the 1st century to the 4th century AD. Remember the line that Daniel wrote in his diary entry? I'm going to read it to you right now. The crudely carved passage confused me. It looked much older than the 4th century structure we had expected. So that's kind of an interesting thing just to point out there. Getting back to Weyer, there's something special about him that he found a way to use the orbs without fear of the shadow. He's found a way to unhinge the shadow from the orbs and use them as they were meant to be used. Now, how he managed to do this, we don't know. It's clear, and with the blessing of a king, that he uses some kind of magic spell to call the shadow to kill a few French soldiers who wanted the orb for themselves, basically, and they were probably planning to kill Weyer afterwards. So, he knows some magic, it seems like, but is it because of that he knows how to use the orbs properly, or is it something else? Is it innate? Is it... who knows? Another mystery that that's still kind of left to speculation. Back to the situation with Alexander and Agrippa. So, the two of them, the two parties, which is Weyer and Alexander, with kind of Agrippa in the middle of all this, they find themselves at a stalemate, because here it is. This is the main reason why Alexander is not yet back yet. He is fighting with Weyer to get back to his home world, and Weyer is insisting to release Agrippa first, but Alexander says, no, Agrippa's the only connection I have to the worlds beyond. I can't just get rid of him like that. I mean, what if I give him over to Weyer and then Weyer doesn't help me? So there's a lack of trust as well between the two of them. It's because of Weyer that Daniel gets roped into this situation, and it's also because of Weyer that the orb in the Tomb of Tin gets found, and the reason why Alexander has to do the ritual by himself, which is a big deal. And it's also because of Weyer that you can actually save Agrippa's life save him from his husk. And if you save Agrippa, then Weyer in turn most likely saves Daniel's life after he gets supposedly killed by the shadow. That ending is kind of left. It's kind of open-ended. I mean, it seems like Agrippa's like, it'll be all right, we'll save you, but we don't see anything after that, so we don't know what really happens. So Weyer is in a difficult situation for the majority of his time after he transverses the portal. Now, as to why he did it when he did it, he probably found out about like Alexander's vitae extractions or experiments. It's just like, this is inhuman, Agrippa, or something like that. Let's get out of here. Let's go beyond the stars, away from this place, and that's it. But Agrippa was too scared to go with him, and he said, now all I can do is regret it, which is really sad, and makes you wonder. Weyer was probably a little bit hurt by that his teacher, his best friend, didn't want to go with him, and now he can't go back and get him, because if he does, he'll risk getting captured by Alexander and being used to bring him back to his homeworld, and probably just being left behind, because Alexander's like, you betrayed me in the first place, I'll betray you right back. Agrippa's in his husk while Alexander's attempting to do the ritual without his help. He's being used as leverage for Weyer to actually be tempted to come back and help Alexander, but they've kind of been going in circles for all this time. Now, it's interesting that Weyer has lived this long. I mean, he lived through these centuries in Alexander's homeworld, talking to Alexander, pleading for Agrippa's release, and he hasn't died yet. And he is a mortal man. Maybe the orbs had something to do with it? Perhaps they slowed down or even stopped his aging process, or reversed it maybe a little bit. It could also be that the way the time passes in Alexander's world is different than it is on Earth, but we don't know that for sure. Weyer and Alexander are at a stalemate now, and they've been fighting for centuries over what to do with Agrippa. Alexander wants to keep him around, Weyer wants him released, and this is why Daniel is Agrippa's last chance of being freed, because by this point, with Daniel's help, Alexander is prepared for the ritual. It is time for him to go home, and he's ready to go back, and he's not taking Agrippa with him. Perhaps figuring this as just punishment for what Agrippa did to him, as payback for his betrayal. He made no trade-off with Weyer, so he's just like, I have no obligation to Agrippa. Weyer is Agrippa's beloved student, his best friend. They've known each other for so long, been separated for centuries, but Weyer is helpless to help him, because he can not go back into Brennenburg, otherwise he'll risk capture himself. And Daniel is Agrippa's last hope. Now we find a note near the end of the game that talks about how to make Weyer's tonic, that is to save Agrippa from his husk. But there's more to it than that. It lists the ingredients for the tonic, obviously, but there's also a part of the note that talks about that Agrippa Agrippa's husk somehow managed to channel Weyer for a bit, and that's how Alexander and Weyer have been communicating. It's interesting that Weyer can actually channel himself through Agrippa for a time. Yeah, it's really weird. It's hard to imagine going up to that husk and then hearing a different voice other than the Agrippa one. You know, you're so used to that husk talking to us with that adorable accent. It seems like in this note that Weyer actually had gotten really close. Probably the closest he's ever been to convincing Alexander to release Agrippa, because Alexander says, I'm going to try to be optimistic even though it's a hopeless feeling. I'm going to try to be and prepare for his release. So he actually writes down the steps to making the tonic, and so there was a possibility that it could have happened, that had maybe if Daniel had not come into the picture, that maybe, possibly, Alexander would have freed Agrippa and Weyer would have tried to help Alexander out. Now, whether or not that Alexander was actually preparing this tonic or whatever just to get on Weyer's good side and then just get him to help him out is unknown. But it's possible. It's possible that Alexander really was going to let Agrippa out of the husk, but just decided against it once Daniel was brought in, and is just like, oh, I have an orb and extra help now to get through the portal on my own. I can figure this out, so screw you. Some things that really fascinate me about this note. One is that apparently Weyer is taunting Alexander from the other side, which is his homeworld, and it could mean it most likely means that it's just Weyer being in Alexander's homeworld is just a slap in the face to Alexander. He's been working for centuries to get there, and a human, of all things, has a mastery over the orbs that he doesn't have, that even he doesn't have. He's frustrated, and he's just like, you know, you're talking to me, and you're over there where I want to be right now, and it's taunting me, you're taunting me. And with the headcanon we have for Weyer, because we don't have any concept art or we don't have much insight into his personality. Even with the Blessing of a King, we're not given a lot of insight as to what Weyer really acts like, other than being kind of a loner and that sort of thing. But our headcanons being based on the fact that Weyer might be a little snarky could play in here, but it also seems unlikely that due to the fact that Weyer's pleading for Agrippa to be freed, that he's actually trying to get under the Baron's skin. You know what I mean? He's not trying to push Alexander's buttons at this point. He's just like, please free Agrippa. I'll help you if you just free Agrippa first. I've been waiting centuries for him to come back. I'll help you. Just please, let my teacher go. There are two quotes about this note that intrigue me even more, and I'd like to kind of go over them with you guys if you'll permit me. So here's the first quote. How an enlightened man can show such lack of compassion in a seat of power disgusts me. That's really intriguing to me. This kind of implies that maybe Weyer was able to gain a place of political standing in Alexander's homeworld, or at least to like an extent, that he's sitting in a position of power that could possibly bring Alexander out of his banishment. Or it could mean that he has power due to the orbs, and or being where the Baron wants to be, which could work as well. And of course, another option is that he had a seat of power he had on Earth. But it's interesting to consider that Weyer might have actually been involved with Alexander's people during this whole time, that he's actually been pleading for his release so that Agrippa will be released as well. So it could be like he's like, I'm going to talk to this council on your behalf to see if they can free you as long as you free Agrippa. Maybe Weyer's been more productive than we give him credit for, even after going through the portal. There is another quote here that is also worth noting, and this is it. Weyer claims he tries his best to release me from my banishment, but that he needs me to give him Agrippa first so he too can help. This is blatantly stating that Weyer was willing to help Alexander, if he released Agrippa, that is. And the two of them would work to lift the Baron's banishment so he could return to his love. That is so interesting. The fact that these two have been butting heads for centuries. They have been arguing. We don't know how intense the arguments have been getting, but what we do know is that the two of them are desperate enough to help each other out just to get what they want. Alexander is considering releasing Agrippa if Weyer really is going to help him, and Weyer is saying, I will try my best to release you from your banishment. I'm trying all I can do, but you have to give me Agrippa so he can help persuade your people to lift your sentence, which is also saying a lot. It kind of confirms my headcanon that even Alexander's people would look up to Agrippa and listen to him. It's just incredible. So, but of course this doesn't come to pass because then Daniel comes in with his orb, and then Alexander throws Agrippa and Weyer by the wayside, and then Daniel becomes the last hope for Agrippa to be saved, and then Weyer obviously can't help Alexander after that if you choose the Agrippa ending, because then Alexander dies. Again, they're all victims of circumstance. Weyer is willing to do whatever it takes, even if it means helping his enemy, even if it means helping Alexander, who he probably hates at this point for holding Agrippa hostage and as leverage. He just doesn't... He's still saying, I'll help for you from your banishment. He's saying this to his enemy just to get his teacher back. That's how much he cares about Agrippa. And it's obvious how helpless and frustrated he feels. The fact that he's been arguing with his enemy for centuries. That he can't do anything because if he goes back, even though he has mastery of the orbs and can return at any time, he can't go back there. He'll get caught by Alexander and then be used. And then, where would he be? Then he would be lost with Agrippa. Yeah, they'd be together again, but for what kind of life, you know? Like Agrippa says, I don't doubt that, but will it be worth living? Weyer plays such an important role that is overlooked so often by the fan base, I think. Just in the fact that he's in the Agrippa ending, and that Daniel would die without his help. Weyer can save Daniel from being killed by the Shadow. That there's much more to his abilities than we give him credit for. If he can save Daniel like that. It's amazing that this character, who has vast control over these powerful objects that plague the other characters, Agrippa, Alexander, Daniel, all fell victim to the orb and its subsequent shadows, all had problems with it, but at the same time need it, and Weyer was the only one who was able to break the shackles of the shadow and use it. But he still can't do much because he's helpless. He's in a stalemate. He doesn't know what to do. And that's where Daniel comes in. And that's where Daniel has the chance to help Weyer, to do what Weyer could not do. I freaking love Weyer as a character. We don't even see him. We don't hear a line of his dialogue, but he plays such an important role. He's not like Alexander's love, which is just there for motivational purposes. He's a key character in The Dark Descent, which is impressive for fictional games to have pulled this off. That a character that is not seen or heard, not seemingly directly involved, is this important. Is this important for the Dark Descent story to have happened, and is happening. It's amazing. I think Weyer is one of the characters that gets the least amount of love in the Amnesia fandom. And I wish he got more, because he deserves it. He really does. He's a great character, and even though a lot of what we have about his looks and his personality are based on headcanons, I think they fit his character a lot, and they work great, and it's gotten me attached to his character even more. And that's all I have to say about Weyer, guys. Everyone say bye, Agrippa!
Don't worry, Daniel. It will be all right.